We're talking top 10 loaches. Now, they don't get a lot of love. I love them. The king being the clown loach. They get so big, they're so derpy, they do funny things. That's why they call them a clown loach. We're gonna start there. So, first know that most clown loaches don't get sold correctly. They get sold as, oh, these are gonna eat snails. Yes, some of them will, some don't. Look at the mouth structure, we're gonna go over that. And then almost no one keeps them in appropriate groups. In the wild, they're in big shoals, right? Shoal means not quite a school, they're not quite packed up, but they got a gang they travel in, and we want to respect that. So, you know, when you go and buy one of this one, one of that one, one of that one, they're not all buddies. Like, they're not going to kill each other, but they're not the same type. So let's stick to some groups. So when it comes to clown loaches, I recommend, honestly, 10 or more. Now, the big problem we've got there is they get large, and I'm talking, you know, foot-long sub large, and they eat a lot, they poop a lot, they're a little bit destructive on plants, but they're fun. They love to cram as many of them they can into, you know, a cave this big, even though they're this big. They do all that. They love to sleep on their side, and then they wait till you go, wait a second, boop, and then they, you know, shoot around the tank. So they do all these funny characteristic things. I've watched them in the 800 gallon before when we had the 800 gallon tank full of clown loaches. There's a specific pebble in there that they love to go pick up and run around the aquarium, and they would play like dogs would. They're very puppy-like, and so that's what makes them one of the most sought after. Yeah, they're a little expensive, but the patterns look cool. They get big. They're typically not aggressive with any other fish. There are some loaches that are very aggressive, like a tiger loach and stuff like that, but they're not making my top 10 list. I like my fish to get along. And so because they have this great color pattern and they have this great personality, that makes them a favorite in the home aquarium. They tolerate a wide variety of parameters. They like to be a little bit warmer. That's the tip. Each one of these I'm going to kind of give a tip. And the tip is keep them like 85 degrees, like discus temperatures. You'll never have ick problems. They'll have great appetites and all of that. And they're a great fish. Do some more research. This is just my top 10. This isn't how we're going to keep them forever and how you're going to have a monster-sized aquarium and all of that. They grow slow. They live over 30 years. There's a bunch of cool stuff going on there, and I've done other videos about them. But that's my number one, clown loaches. Next up, the KUHLI loach. Squiggly worms, danger noodles, whatever you want to call them. They kind of gross me out when I've got a bunch of them in a bag from the store because they're worming around, but they're super fun in your tank. Now, I like them in planted tanks. They love to live in the roots of plants, and they're great cleanup crew. They don't eat snails. They have a much more snub nose mouth than other KUHLI or other loaches, and so they're not a great snail eater. They don't really even eat fry of fish or anything like that, and they stay pretty small. You know, about the biggest one I ever saw was like the size of a cigarette, and the reason I say that is because it was that big around and like that long. It was a chunky monkey for sure, and it was like 12 years old or something. This woman had it for a very long time. I saw it in her home, and it was amazing. Typically, we see the underweight ones at a pet store. They're hidden. You got to kind of look for them, and you're going, is that? And then you lift up the decoration. There's 7,000 of them. So that's one of the downfalls to them is they're very nocturnal. And so at night they're super active, but at night we're sleeping. So some good night lights and maybe a flashlight. You get to see a lot more of their activity. Feeding them after the lights go out, also a good idea. They love worms. They love, you know, so much of the food. But don't make them compete for it if they don't have to. And they come in many different types. And in fact, we're going to talk about one specific type later, but you can get different patterns and that kind of stuff. My tip is here, please don't ask your local fish store to catch that specific KUHLI loach. It is fun as a joke. Like, I do recommend everyone start with, oh, could you get me that one? And then wait 10 seconds. Be like, I'm just kidding. I'll take 4 of them. Don't worry about it. I know it's going to be crazy. And get them home, enjoy them, quarantine everything like we always should. We've got videos for that, but enjoy them. They're great for planted tanks and wide parameters again, and you can get them at almost any pet store, so it's win-win-win on all of those. Next up, we have the HILLSTREAM loach. This thing looks like an alien face sucker, which is super cool. In the wild, it can crawl up waterfalls. Who doesn't need that? Wait, we don't have a waterfall, so why do we like it? Looks like a baby stingray, too. And they're great algae eaters. So I've got some in the 800 gallon. You can't see them because they only get this big. And those goldfish are like this big, so you can't see them now. But they are in there. They do breed. and they're very fun. Now, when you read about them online, they're going to go, you can't keep those in warm water? Heck no. Well, I personally have bred them quite a few different times in different tanks. We keep them at the store and they're warm. In here, they're at 85. When we kept them with those clown loaches, they were breeding. We had rock work so the babies could escape. And so my advice would be, they don't have to go in cold water only. They can go in normal tropical temperatures as well. And they don't have to have that fast flow. Now, will they appreciate that? Yes. Do they wish they were crawling up a waterfall inside your house? Yes, they do. But we don't have that, and they do well, and they breed, and they seem to flourish and live a long time in other setups also. And so if you want a little baby stingray that looks like a face sucker that will instantly, anyone that sees it goes, what's that fish? Every time, whether they're fish related or not, they go, ooh, that's cool. Reticulated HILLSTREAM loach is that. Next up, we have the dwarf chain loach. Now, these ones definitely in a school. They are a little pack animal, about 3 inches or so. They definitely have that sloped nose so they can get in there and eat snails. And in my opinion, this is the best snail eating loach for your planted aquarium because they don't get big. They don't destroy plants. They school around. They look cool. They've got a bunch of things going for them, except for the price. They're expensive. You know, they could be anywhere from 12 to 20 bucks a piece, depending on where you are in the world or the country. And you need like 6 of them at the bare minimum. But when you do get them, they're long-lived. They do really well. You don't have to feed them a ton, but they will murder those snails. So careful there. But I fall in love with the looks of them, and they're great. You know, if you got a 20, 30, 40-gallon tank, having a little pack of those swim around is nice because they'll go mid-water too, and they'll perch on plants, and they're not just typically just your standard bottom dweller. Next up, we've got the yo-yo loach. I kind of consider this to be like a budget clown loach, and what I mean by that is they get fairly large. They will eat snails. They've got that sloped nose, and that's typically what they get sold for. And they're cheaper. They're usually in that $5 to $8 range, and they get their name from, on the side of them, looks like someone spelled out yo-yo. So that's why we call them yo-yo loaches. Their temperament is relatively mild. They can be a little ornery with each other. They sometimes can go well with, you know, like African cichlids, certain Central and South American cichlids. Bigger aquariums can utilize them quite a bit. They'll obviously murder invertebrates like snails and shrimp and things like that. But yeah, my tip is get a group of them, at least 6 again, and enjoy them, and make sure they can't get stuck inside decorations. That's what murders a lot of loaches is, you know, I can fit in that tiny little thing. Think of it like a cat that just stuffs itself into stuff, except you got 6 of them and they're all trying to do that. And you know, too often you have to break a decoration and get one out and then treat the bacterial infection. So keep the decorations nice and like not sparse, but like, you know, oh, the hole's this big, not, oh, it's slightly bigger than that loach, because 2 loaches will definitely try to get in there. Somehow they're a magnet for those kind of hijinks. Next, we have a loach that is very similar to the yo-yo loach, the Angelicus loach. Why would we list a loach so close to that one? Because this one is like the upgraded version of yo-yo loach. It doesn't have that mean bone in its body. The colors are a little more vibrant, and in general, they're harder to get, of course, dang it. But they don't get quite as big either. They get more like 4 inches instead of that 5, 6, you know, real fat hot dog style. They stay more slender. You still need a group of 6 or more of them, and really 10 or more, 12 or more, 100 or more. Like, you know, we want more, they want more. But they look better. And if you see yo-yos and Angelicus next to each other, you'll go, wow, yeah, those are much vibrant, and they act differently, and they're just a really nice fish to have. They're a little more outgoing too, which I find is a good trait to have. So my tip is, you know, look for them, and they're not the easiest ones to find, but you'll be rewarded. And they're willing, you got to pay a few dollars more. You might have to pay $9.99 or $12.99 each, but get them into your possession, and you will love them. Strongly recommend deworming all loaches. That's my tip on these guys, is deworm all the loaches, but especially ones like this that are typically wild caught. Next up, we have the zebra loach. Now the zebra loach has a different pattern to it. Looks like zebra, right? And these guys get about 4 inches, have a sloped nose, will eat snails and shrimp, and well, shrimp babies, not necessarily big snails, but or big shrimp, but they will get inside snail shells, and that's why they have that sloped nose, so they can get in that snail shell, eat that meat out of there, and they love to eat mollusks, clams, that kind of stuff too, so careful there. But these guys are nice. Keep them in a group of 6 or more. They're more outgoing. They're more laid back. They're usually about $8 or $9. And in general, wide parameters like most of these loaches. And so that's where a lot of this top 10 is. What look are you looking for? Do you already have something that looks like that? And do you have the size to get something bigger? Do you need to go smaller? And these guys are just great, honestly. One of my favorites. The next up is the silver KUHLI Loach. I told you we were going to get back to him. Now this one is different. Now of KUHLI Loaches, there's at least 14 different types of that family of loaches. This one, they sometimes call it the silver eel. That kind of is much longer and it has no pattern to it and it's silver. So it looks much different. All the same care requirements. You need to keep a bunch of them. They're still going to be nocturnal. They're still going to want to eat after the lights are out, but they look super cool. And even other fish nerds would be like, what's that? I haven't seen that before. So they are going to be hard to find. We bring them in whenever we can get them because they're always a hit. And, you know, you can keep them with your other KUHLI Loaches too. You just have 2 different flavors. Who doesn't like that? Next up, we have a nano loach. That is the ROSY Loach. They only get about that big. They're tiny and only the males get color. So the males are this kind of rosy-ish color and the females get bigger, fatter, and browner. But you can breed them in as small as a 5-gallon aquarium, and they're a great planted tank fish. So, you know, if you've got scarlet batis, and you've got shrimp, and you've got Brigitei rasboras, and celestial pearl danios, all those types of nano fish, these guys are a great addition to that. Whereas all those other ones, much too boisterous and too big and not a good idea. These ones are the good idea. And if you had a desk at work and you had just a 5-gallon, you're looking for something, a breeding project, play with these guys. They're super fun and they're cheap. They're usually always under $5, maybe $6 at the most. And you can get away with, you know, like 3 or 4 of them. They're not as much of the social, we need a billion of us running from one side to the aquarium to the other. They're kind of more low key, but being that they're small, they're a little more passive in the tank, but very fun and enjoyable. So get yourself in some in that nano tank. Last up, the DOJO Loach. It's a great loach, and it's the weather loach. Why do they call it the weather loach? Well, in theory, it does different behavior when the pressure changes outside. I haven't really noticed that, but they can tolerate very cool water as well. So they typically are kept with goldfish. Now, they do like to eat a lot. They will burrow under gravel or sand sometimes, and they will harass shrimp and snails. I haven't really seen them consume them. I'm not putting it that they couldn't, but typically in that aquarium, like we wouldn't run snails in an aquarium with goldfish anyway. What they don't want to be super hot. So this is one where you take them to 80 degrees, they really don't do well. They get a lot of fungal and bacterial infections. So you want to keep them cooler. An unheated aquarium, as long as it's staying cool enough in your house. Sometimes if you're in like, you know, more mildish winter area, like maybe you're in California and you can keep them outside year round. Now they might be illegal in California, I don't know, but they're legal here and they're awesome and they do well with goldfish and other cool water tanks. They get about this big, a full-size, foot-long hot dog, and about that big around. They come in albino forms now, which is new, gold forms, and the normal kind of spotted weather loach or spotted DOJO loach form. They're typically pretty cheap. You know, the standard ones can be anywhere from $2 to $5, whereas some of these albinos and the goldens are 10, 12, that kind of area. But these ones aren't as social. So while you could totally keep 6 or 7 and you're going to enjoy that, keeping 1 to 3 also seems to work. I haven't noticed huge differences. That doesn't mean they wouldn't appreciate it, but I don't see them being as social. And so most people do fall in love with them, so they keep multiple anyway. But as whenever we're talking about small numbers, I always recommend 1 or 3 or more, not just, you know, 2. 2, you can get a male, female, and one starts trying to breed with the other all the time, or 2 males, they start fighting or squabbling or fighting over food. So 1 or 3 or more, and I definitely recommend on that 3 or more area just because they're a great, great fish to add to your aquarium. Plant safe, which is nice, but temperature sensitive. Hopefully you enjoyed that top 10. We've got more videos like this on the channel. We'll link to that at the end here, and then at the bottom in the description and pinned comment, check it out, sign up for our newsletter. We've got an incredible blog, and we have lots of guides for you to download, from algae guides, from water changing guides, and stuff like that. So we're here to help, and we'll see you in the next video.